from Abuja.
Hello, thank you for being a part of our show. I appreciate you. I am Magnus Packle, and this is Magnus Packle GVA. As you know, it's all about how we can raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. In view today, perspectives on MDGs in Africa. We bring a discussion with Mr. Banyanzaki Henry, Minister of State for Economic Monitoring in Uganda, on global perspectives on MDGs and how well Africa is doing. But before that, in our hidden economics, we look at basic economics of love. But up next, we bring you some business and development indicators in our quick view. That's coming right up. The Gini index measures the extent to which the distribution of income, or in some cases, consumption expenditure among individuals or households within an economy deviates from a perfectly equal distribution. So the Gini index for a country can range from 0, suggesting perfect equality in income distribution, to 100, where there is perfect inequality. In this connection, which of the following African countries has the highest Gini index? South Africa, Namibia, Angola, and Nigeria. Which of the following African countries has the lowest Gini index? Nigeria, Botswana, Rwanda, and Zambia. Still in view, our discussion with Honorable Banyanzaki Henry, Minister of State for Economic Monitoring in Uganda. But up next in our hidden economics, the basic economics of love. I fit die on top your matter. The great Nigerian artist Wizkid couldn't put it any better. So, is the price of love unquantifiable? Apparently, Wizkid in this song has determined that he is ready to pay the ultimate price for the one he loves. It turns out that in reality, it is hard to put a price on love. What people are really paying for is not the love itself, but the opportunity to express love. After all, if you love someone, that is, if you are supplying the love, you are not paying to supply it to the person. And you most definitely cannot pay someone and expect that the person will give you a specific quantity of love. The equilibrium price in the demand and supply of love is obviously indeterminate. This means that a market of demand and supply cannot determine a price for love. Real love carries a lot of sacrifice. In the Holy Bible, it says that God so loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son to die for it. So it appears God paid himself, well, because there is no one else for him to pay, a price for the purpose of expressing his love to mankind. When you marry someone, particularly in Africa, you often pay a bride price to the parents of the girl as a token that allows you to publicly and legally express your love to the lady. Guys, it is not a price you pay in order to get the lady's love. It is a token price you pay so you can express your love to the girl. So love, it turns out, is not something you buy What you may buy is the opportunity to express love. Love without the readiness to pay a high price is really not love. That's why love has to be unconditional. You love someone or your country not because of what they have done for you, but because of what you want to do for them. So WizKid is ready to die on top your matter to show that he will pay anything for the opportunity to express his love to you. Our hidden economics for you. Before we start our discussion in view, here are our quick view answers. Among the countries shown, Namibia has the highest Gini index, reflecting a relatively more unequal income distribution compared to the other countries listed here. Among the countries listed, Nigeria has the lowest Gini index, reflecting a relatively more equal distribution of income compared to the other countries shown here. To contact us, please see our information displayed on the screen. Following the recent and very successful first annual conference on MDGs in Nigeria, organized by the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on MDGs, in collaboration with the Center for Socio-Economic Development, CLED, and other stakeholders, we were privileged to have a discussion with Honorable Banyanzaki Henry, Minister of State for Economic Monitoring in the Office of the President of Uganda. Please join me in my discussion with Mr. Banyanzaki Henry on some perspectives on Africa's attainment of the MDGs. Okay, Honorable Minister, we're very pleased that you are here in our Magoni studios here in Abuja, and you haven't come all the way from Kampala, Uganda, and we're happy that you've been able to take the time to come see us in our studios. Now, what are the major things that we have achieved, as a result of the MDG goals?
Thank you very much for hosting me. The most important thing that Africa has achieved, I think, was to get a development plan, a global development plan that allowed Africa all together and to have set targets, much of some of these targets we had them within our development plans. Okay. But at least we were given targets to be achieved in a specific time, and it was like it created momentum within the African countries and within our African leadership to achieve these set targets.
Yes.
And it gave a rider for for country development plans to be like a model plan.
Now, of the 8 goals, the 8 major MDGs, which ones do you think African countries are likely to achieve before expiration next year?
The only problem here, before I go to what have been achieved,
yes,
the only problem here is that these goals were set. The whole plan was done from New York.
Okay.
So it was a top-down kind of plan.
Yes.
So by the time countries, population, local governments came to adopt them, and parliaments, the main key stakeholders came on board a bit late.
Yes, that's
it
true.
came on board 10 years after some of the countries.
Absolutely.
Some of the countries are coming on board when the Millennium Development Goals are ending. You can see Africa is on track. Actually, when one can say Africa is on track, is the rising giant economically.
Africa is rising.
That's where we have
I want to just ask a very poignant question here. Earlier when you were talking, you said we were given these targets. And my question has always been, why would we wait in Africa for somebody in New York to give us targets? We didn't know that we have to do something in Africa about maternal health. We did not know that we needed to address the issues of gender parity. We did not know that we needed to send our kids to school. Why must we wait for a set of goals to be dictated from New York? In fact, I think that President Sirleaf was the person that said once that the MDG issue is a basically African issue. There is mainly African countries that are involved with the MDGs. Is it because we're waiting for somebody to tell us what to do?
You are absolutely right. But you also well know that Africa, we were more or less our development, our development journey was more or less cut short. And you know very well the coup d'etats in 1960s after independence, when we have our great men, Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kenyatta, and Patrice Lumumba, yes, and those assassinations. There was a lot of, I don't know, I can call it sabotage. In the modern world, we can call it sabotage. And because of that, Africa, we did not grow at the pace we would have grown. So we were left on the development radar. And because we were left on the development ladder, having these set goals coming from New York, let's take it positively. We are now there's the globalization concept. Look at it from the globalization concept. Yeah. Though we would have thought about it, our own African countries, we should have planned about them. But it's no more, let's take it positively, that a good plan came from the United Nations. Individual countries, of course, had these kind of plans, but it was not being as accelerated as it should have been. You have some countries which were giving priority to other areas. Some countries would give priority to security. Yes. Some other countries would give priority to education. Other countries to health. So the planning was not homogeneous. So these Millennium Development Goals allowed the whole world, especially the developing countries, to have a homogeneous development agenda. So let's look at it from that point of view. Though I agree with you, yeah, we don't need to have been reminded that we need to go to end poverty, we need to end hunger, yes, we need education, yes, and because of that, the achievement has been sporadic. Yes. Some countries have achieved like goal 1, like for example in my country, Uganda, yes, we achieved the goal 1, the eradicate extreme poverty, to make it a half within the 15 years. We achieved that. In 1986, the poverty levels were at 56. As I speak now, the poverty levels are at 22%. So that means we achieved on those goals. Absolutely. Universal primary education, it was a learning tool. Most of the countries within Africa, they achieved that. So, but we have achieved the fight, the environment, the global partnership for development. Yes. You know, this is something that in Africa, we know what's happening within our economic blocks. Like, yes, if we take East African community, yes, it is one of the fastest economic bloc, yes, that we have in Africa. Absolutely, it is. Even the world, yes, that is composed of Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, yes, Burundi. Southern Sudan is coming on board. We are thinking of bringing Somalia.
As Economic Monetary Minister, what do you see as the role of the private sector in Uganda, and you can take that across Africa, in helping us to speed growth and have inclusive growth in the manner that we want, that we talk about in Africa?
Well, you see, countries all over the world, except maybe if we can take an exclusivity of China and some few countries, it is the private sector growth that is leading the governments. Yes. The governments we have, the norm is no longer, the norm is not public. It's not the public, it's not the government that's leading us in growth, it's, yes, private sector. Absolutely. And because it is in the private sector, governments will have a role to create an enabling environment, yes, for this private sector growth. It's the private sector that will create jobs. We did not bring the private sector on board early enough. Actually, it was not brought on board at all. Yes. So we need to bring them on board in the Sustainable Development Goals. Yes. We have an opportunity now, in the sense that the Sustainable Development Goals it has come up as a result of consultative process. They are now bottom up. Africa is the most blessed continent on the globe, on the planet Earth. We have all the resources that it takes to develop Africa. all the countries, all the nations world over, they are looking at Africa for exploitation of resources. So it is the high time that Africa will wake up. We wake up the dreams of Kwame Nkrumah and have a united Africa.
Yes.
And we unite together.
Yes.
Trade amongst ourselves.
Because of time, Minister Henry, I want to, and you are full of knowledge and information, and I wish we had more time to do this. We may have to follow you to Kampala, to continue this discussion. But I want you to just summarize, just tell us here. Everybody says Africa is rising. You just said Africa is rising. And there's attention being paid to Africa now, from across the world, from
yes.
China, the United States, from Europe. Can we handle the world this time so that we don't become what we became during the time of colonialism? Can we handle the world?
The strength of Africa is in its unity.
Yeah.
The only reason why Africa we were managed were because we were the partition of Africa. We have smaller states that are weak. You have smaller states, you have like Rwanda, a weak state, Burundi, a weak state, Uganda, Kenya. It was fragmented. And because Africa was fragmented, states were weakened. Because states were weakened, we were easily conquered. So it's high time that Africa will come back together. We have the united Africa. We make the vision of Kwame Nkrumah a reality. Much as we cannot achieve it overnight, but we should take advantage of these economic blocks that we are having, the ECOWAS, the East African Community, yes. We have the SADC. So we first build these blocks together. Let's have the intertrade. There is more business within Africa than Africa trading with China, than Africa trading with America. So let's have an intertrade. I can't imagine coming from Uganda to Nigeria that I have to pass in Europe first to come in. What a mess. I can't imagine that I cannot cross Congo, my immediate country neighbor, that I have to go to Europe first in order to come to Congo. That's a mess. We need to develop the infrastructure in Africa. An infrastructure in Africa that will serve the whole of Africa. Let's have a railway from Mombasa to the coast. Let's have one from Cape Town to Egypt. Yes. Let's have from West Africa. Let's have a railway system that I can, if I'm going, for example, to Kampala, I could have gone with a swift railway system. So we need to invest in infrastructure. Look at the potential of Africa in energy. If Africa developed its energy potential, we would light the whole world. Look at the potential in the Congo River. Look at the River Nile. Look at the potential of River Nile itself. Look at the fauna and flora that we have in Africa. So Africa, we need to unite. We need to plan together. And actually, I would even been happy if instead of having the global plan, we have the Africa plan. So the African plan, we are now coming up with the African Union. So once we have the African Union, the issue that now the African Union, the vision of the African Union is 2060. That is too far. The world is moving very fast. The world left us long time ago. So we need spirit. Our plans, we need spirit. And the East African Union needs to translate itself into an economic powerhouse rather than translating itself into a geopolitical alignment. So you cannot have a geopolitical alignment, political. It cannot serve the interests of Africa. We cannot be on the same pace with America. We need to have the economic powerhouse. Let's have an unity based on economy to galvanize our potential. We develop our mineral potential. The mineral potential of Africa is in trillions Absolutely. Of dollars, not in billions of Absolutely. Dollars. Yes. When we are talking about oil, everywhere, the oil is getting depleted. The resources are in Africa. Diamond is in Africa. Gold is in Africa. Iron ore is in Africa. Talk of any mineral, you will find it in Africa. Any deposit, the biggest deposit is in Africa. Talk about whatever you talk about, anything you want to talk about, it's in Africa. So let's Africa unite. Let's plan together. Let's end these useless wars. This kind of these wars that we are fighting, interstate wars. You cannot have a state in America fighting another state. It is unheard of. So why should a country like you find a country like you, one country in Africa fighting another country? And you find that our enemies are exogenous. So let's be together. Let's look at ourselves together. Look at me and you. One would think that we are real brothers. You're a Nigerian, I'm a Ugandan. We are the same people.
Absolutely.
So we need to look ourselves as one and transcend above all this. We need education, the most important thing.
Yes.
So let's educate the whole of Africa. Let's understand. Let's have the unity for a purpose. And then Africa will be on top of the world.
On that note, Honorable Minister, I want to thank you so very much for coming to see us.
Thank you.
Extraordinary.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Over the past few years, Africa has staged a major comeback from the misery growth period of the 1980s and 1990s. This impressive economic performance has rekindled hopes for the continent's economic competitiveness. But in spite of this, significant job growth across Africa has continued to be elusive. To overcome this, economic transformation programs in Africa must adopt an inclusive growth strategy that creates well-paying jobs and reduces poverty. Now, looking directly at achievements in Africa on the MDGs, it is clear that there is sustained progress as several countries appear to be on track to achieving the targets of universal primary education, gender parity at all levels of education, lower HIV and AIDS prevalence among 15 to 24-year-olds, increased proportion of the population with access to antiretroviral drugs, and increased proportion of seats held by women in national parliaments. To support this, Africa is now clearly the world's second fastest growing region. With all this, extreme poverty rates among African countries have declined, although not rapidly enough to reach their 2015 targets. For example, the proportion of people living in extreme poverty, that is on less than $1.25 a day, in sub-Saharan Africa as a group fell from 56.5% in 1990 to 48.5% in 2010. This is about 20.3 percentage points off the 2015 target. Now compare this to just about 4.1 percentage points for South Asia. So there's still much work to be done on poverty in Africa. And this is why income inequality is still very high in many African countries. I conclude that aggressive and well-targeted conditional cash transfer programs can help reduce income inequality and poverty in Africa. This is what Brazil did with its Bolsa Familia conditional cash transfer program, which has lifted millions out of poverty and greatly reduced income inequality. I can tell you this. I designed the brand of conditional cash transfer CCT program being used throughout Nigeria today. All it needs is to be adequately funded and well targeted. To be successful, African governments should strive to incorporate these kinds of CCTs in the policies that promote accountable and transparent governance that focuses on growing the private sector in order to expand the middle class and sustain the ongoing pace of economic growth. I'm Magnus Paco, and that's my view.
Adonai,